Colleen here from Paint a Gem, and today I'm going to show you how I prepped this desk to get it ready for paint. I know you have questions and you have furniture that you want to paint and it feels confusing and overwhelming and you don't know where to start, so I'm going to show you step by step. It's really not that hard. You can do it and you can transform your furniture in a matter of a day or two, and the first step is the prep. So let's get it started. Let's get started. The first thing I did when I brought this piece home was fill these little spots that had holes. I used my wood filler, I let it dry overnight, I sanded it down, and I had to add a little bit more filler to it. I've let that dry and I'm going to sand it again. So that's the first thing you're going to do is fill all those little spots. Use your 220 grit sandpaper, sand it down. Use your finger, make sure it's nice and smooth, you don't feel any holes or any pits, and that is going to be good to go. So you're going to go around all the spots that you filled, make sure they're nice and smooth and ready to be primed. Alright, once you have all of the repairs done, any holes filled, all of those things are finished, what I do next is take off all of the existing hardware. This piece has hinges inside that hold the desk closed. So we're going to take off all of the pulls. You go to the inside of the drawer and just start taking out all these screws. If you plan to reuse the hardware, I always find it's a good idea to drop it all into a Ziploc bag, especially this piece has hinges on it. We don't want to lose the hinges or any of the screws. So I take everything out, put everything in a Ziploc so I don't forget or don't lose any pieces. I keep hardware even if I'm replacing it with something new and a little bit more modern looking. I'll still keep the old hardware because sometimes I'll find a use for it on a different piece that I'm working on. So I save everything. So for now, we're just going to take all the hardware off. I'm going to put everything in this bag, and if you're working on more than one piece at a time, label each bag with which piece this belongs to. This is going to say desk. So we'll get all the hardware off and we'll go on to the next step. Once the hardware is off, the next step is probably the most important step in the whole process of prepping your piece to paint. It's called cleaning. So if you're lucky like me, your piece is only dusty and it doesn't need much. I'm just using some everyday glass cleaner and paper towel. You want to wipe it down, get all the dust off, because you want your paint to stick, and if there's any dirt on the piece, your paint's going to stick to the dirt, but it's not going to stick to your furniture. It might look okay for, a short time, but after a while, your paint's going to start coming off. So this piece is pretty clean. It just needs to get wiped down with a very basic glass cleaner. I've even used baby wipes, things like that. If you're lucky, nice clean piece. If your piece has more grime and goo and oily stuff on it, which I've had enough of those, there's a product you can buy. There's lots of products you can use to clean and take stuff off. TSP is a good heavy-duty cleaner for furniture prior to prepping it. That's something you can find right in Home Depot or Lowe's. I've brought home pieces of furniture that have had stickers all over them. Stickers all over furniture. So they're hard to get off sometimes. Something like Goo Gone. I love Goo Gone. Goo Gone's my best friend. Spray a lot of Goo Gone on the sticker, and within a couple minutes all the adhesive has come loose. You can really scrape it right off. After the Goo Gone, you need to use a good cleaner to get all the Goo Gone off your furniture, or the paint will not stick to that area. So just right now, go ahead, give your whole piece a good cleaning, inside, outside, all the drawers. Really lucky this little desk, this insert comes out, so I can wipe this down. It'll make it a lot easier to paint it as well. All right guys. Now that we've gotten all the dirt off, something that I do a good bit of time is take my 220 sandpaper and I give the whole piece just a once over. Doesn't even have to be really hard, just to kind of rough up the surface so that the primer is going to have some tooth to grab into on the wood. This piece doesn't have a very heavy, shiny, glossy finish on it. I probably don't even need to sand it. If it were something that were really shiny, really slick, sand it really good by hand for a couple minutes, rough it up real good before you prime, and then quick wipe it down again to get all the dust off from your sanding. So I'm going to do that right now. And okay, so at this point you're ready to get your primer on. So let's talk about primer for just a minute. Why do we prime? We prime for two reasons. One, to help with adhesion, and two, to help with blocking any stains. This one does a great job of both. This piece is made out of pine. You can see there's some knots on the side. I don't want any of that to show through my paint, especially if I paint white. I want everything to be hidden real well. So this is a great, cheap, water-based primer I use on pretty much everything. So here we go. Okay, so less is more, guys. Less is more. You're just going to put on a little bit and smooth it all through, okay? It doesn't have to be real pretty. This is just your primer. It's not going to be your finished coat. I like to protect my floor with a drop cloth, and then I like to put some pieces of wood underneath the legs of my furniture. That way if my brush needs to come down real low, it's not grabbing on the drop cloth and potentially any dust, or in my house, dog hair, anything like that. You get a nice kind of barrier there between brush and floor. So I'm just going to go ahead, get all this primer on. It dries pretty quick. You do not need a thick coat, less is more. So we're just gonna get this baby primed, and we'll see you on the other side. This is the side of the desk, and you can see right here where I went over one of the knots, it's turned a little bit yellow. So that is called, those are tannins in the wood that are they just want to bleed through. And this is why we prime. If I paint this piece just a light color, a white, a creamy white, a light pink, anything, even light blue, very light colors, those tannins are going to come right through, and you're going to see it in your end result. This is why we prime. Spots like that might require primer to dry, a little more primer. Primer dry, a little more primer. It can sometimes take 2 or 3 applications of primer over the spots that you see bleeding through, just to get really, really good stain block. So anyway, I just want to show you guys that. Okay, so you can see I've got the primer on the desk, and now I'm going to prime all of the drawers, and it's really the same application. Something I like to do sometimes with drawers, where the holes where the hardware goes, take a piece of painter's tape and put it across the hole from the inside of the drawer. That will help any paint drips from going down the hole and then dripping inside your drawer. I've done it, trust me. Put some tape in there, save yourself a headache. So put the primer on the same way, nice thin coat. If it needs more, you can always add more. Those spots where the knots are bleeding through. I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of sandpaper just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and probably put another coat of primer, not on the whole thing, on the whole desk, but just on those spots that are gonna become problematic and bleed through. So if I have the same problem with the drawers, we'll do the same thing. Let it dry, sand down a little bit just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and hit it with a little more primer. And there you go. Isn't that beautiful? Look, you did it, guys. You prepped your first piece of furniture. It's all ready for paint. Next thing I would do, once the primer dries, I like to sand it down with my 220 sandpaper just to make sure it's all smooth before I put my pretty paint on. I let the primer sit for 12 to 24 hours, and then she's ready to go. You guys did a great job. Thanks so much for joining me here. Bye-bye.